First of all, let me thank you for coming at a moment I consider to be an extremely important period in the history of this nation. Times like these, I'm tempted almost to return to the courts, where the fundamental rights of our people are being threatened. Having observed what has transpired with the raid by the police officers on the offices of a media house, Newsday, and then to the home of Mr. Andre Bagu, we consider that to be a breach of the fundamental rights of all of our peoples. As you know, in our Constitution, under Section 4, and I shall read it just so that and shall continue to exist without discrimination by reason of race, origin, color, religion, or sex, the following fundamental human rights and freedoms, namely, and they go through, and it ends at K, the freedom of the press. No democracy can survive without a free press. None of the rights that are mentioned in our Constitution can be preserved or protected if the freedom of the press is not maintained and protected. On the basis of what we have seen, the COP's position is clear and unambiguous. We condemn that action of the police, whether it's an investigation into a criminal offense or not. We have to appreciate that the media is in a separate and special category. They are the protectors of the people and the rights of the people. To suggest that a warrant had been obtained from a justice of the peace brings us no comfort. In that, the purpose of the search really was, at the end of the day, to obtain the source of information for an article, apparently, which has brought about this whole scenario. The media cannot survive. A free press cannot survive if the source or the sources that feed information to the media is jeopardized. It's as simple as that. Many persons go to the media when they're afraid to go to the authorities, and sometimes the very police, for fear of victimization or for any other reasons. When the police use or go under the guise of law, and I say the guise of law, to obtain what they could not obtain otherwise, a search warrant for the source of information, I ask, what is the offense that was committed or that they are investigating to have authorized them to use such a method? To that end, the COP calls upon the Commissioner of Police to launch an immediate investigation. First of all, to tell this public within 24 hours what is the offense that was being investigated that warranted a breach of the right of the freedom of the press. This is not to suggest for a moment that the police and the law enforcement authorities do not have responsibilities and duties, but they must exercise it with extreme restraint and within very narrow confines of the law. It is our suggestion for future reference that when it comes to matters of a warrant in relation to press houses or to the media generally, that those warrants should be obtained from the very least a high court judge who will assess the information that is presented to ascertain, first of all, whether any criminal offense is being properly investigated, and if that is so, whether there is reasonable grounds for the warrant to issue. Having said that, I think that we must all together stand as one in this effort. And we see this, and I use the term atrocious attack on the freedom of the press. And that we must all be vigilant to ensure that this is not repeated in the almost callous way it has been. This comes in the light of a raid, and I use the term again, a raid on another media house, TV6, some months ago, in an ongoing investigation. So today, we stand with the media, we stand with all of Trinidad and Tobago. The Congress of the People is about the protection of our rights. We will not allow it to be eroded by anyone or by any means possible. Thank you very much. We're open to questions.
What could be done to prevent recurrent disruption that seems to be happening on a regular basis?
And that is why, thank you, that is why what you do and continue to do is so critically important. The nation must stand on this, because when we go to the precipice edge and we look over, what would be the natural consequence if the media is not protected? There'll be silence, and in silence anything can go. Therefore, it is the time now for all of the media, all right-thinking citizens to stand up, including those who have responsibility for institutions like the Commissioner of Police, to have an immediate and meaningful investigation as to how this transpired. I understand he did not know that such a raid was to take place, a matter that impacts upon a fundamental right on an institution of state, a media house, and he was not made to know. And therefore, I do not wish to now go into that aspect, but I say we need to strengthen institutions to ensure that no institution is permitted to abuse the rights of anyone.
What does it say about the fact that the commissioner was not aware of it? What does it say about the police citizens?
And therefore, those are questions that we must ask. And I ask the media to properly put that to him or to those who have that responsibility. I speak here today on behalf of the Congress of the People. As a leader, I have my deputy political leader, the General Secretary, Dr. Lincoln Douglas, and of course, a former and very able journalist in our General Secretary, Mr. Neeraj Tiwari. So that is why we thought it necessary. Others have said basically the same things, but it is important for every voice now to be raised and let everyone else know where we stand on this matter, and we stand together on this.
Mr. Rahman, do you think that the Integrity Commission, when you read all the newspaper reports today, insinuates that they may have had some kind of influence, perhaps acting outside of their ambit?
And that, if that is so, that's a very dangerous thing. The police and law enforcement have a duty to perform whatever action is necessary within the law and not based on influence. And the point I made when I spoke earlier is, what criminal offense is being investigated here? Has there been a misunderstanding of the integrity legislation, that a breach of the mechanisms or the internal workings of the Integrity Commission is covered under the Act? I say no. And, you know, I would hope that the police had received proper legal advice before they attempted to effect such a warrant.
What strikes me is that whether or not the media houses in question prior to this raid, we had the TV6 incident, was that on most occasions, most media houses indicated that they were fully cooperating with the authorities. Why then yet we see that show of force by the police?
That is a question that must be answered. And we had asked that question before and there was no answer. Today we ask it again, and there must be an answer. That's why we put a time frame of 24 hours on the Commissioner of Police to answer this. It means really it is for the show of force and not for the effect of an investigation. If, as you have pointed out, there was cooperation and things were going along, to take a warrant is an extremely serious thing. It gives you right of the state to enter into a home, to your property, and therefore take away your right to privacy also. It must be exercised with the greatest restraint, and only when it's absolutely necessary. And these are the things that are growing democracy. These are the questions we must now answer and set that standard for future conduct. We cannot deal with the past in terms of stopping it, but we have to analyze what went in the past to know where we are today and why we are here today and how we move forward. This is a turning point of how we must do things. The standards that the COP speaks about, this is an occasion for us all to say enough is enough and to set that standard.
Mr. Ramda, have you spoken with other colleagues inside the government, and how do you view this latest attack on you?
Without breaching any confidentiality, I've spoken to a few who are quite appalled about this, who denigrate the actions in the manner in which it has been conducted.
So, you're saying you're giving the Commissioner of Police 24 hours. Is there a plan of action after that response, or if he does not respond in that 24 hours?
There's always we don't act lightly, and there's always a plan of action. But we will, let's hope, and I imagine that the Commissioner of Police, he too, knowing his responsibility to the people, will act with alacrity in this matter.
And have you spoken with the Commissioner of Police about that? Has there been any communication?
Once again, without breaching confidentiality of the National Security Council. I can say that I did speak with him yesterday.
Minister, you spoke about strengthening certain institutions to guard press freedom and that's that. How do you go about strengthening these institutions? Would it also require decriminalization of certain laws? And I think you're saying that the definition law.
These are matters that we must look at in a wider perspective. But immediately it comes to mind that a justice of the peace is empowered to issue a warrant. Coming from a criminal practice for many, many years, I could tell you very often, and I'm not making any statement of fact in relation to this case, but what I can tell you is that generally there is not a sufficient production of informational evidence to in many cases justify a warrant, and we've seen that in many cases in the past. What I'm saying here, that the status of the media is very different from the regular criminal prosecution or anything like that. You are an institution of state that protects, when I say of state, I mean of the people, that protects the rights of all of our people, and therefore to interfere with the foundation, and I think you will all agree, if you don't have confidentiality of your sources, you have nothing. And that is where this is an arrow into the heart of the responsibilities and authority of the media. And therefore, we are saying, as an immediate first thought, that it should be, in the very least, taken to a judge to issue any warrant for the search of any premises, any media house or media personality. All right? Any other questions?
The anti-corruption bureau.
Yeah.
So that which ministry does that fall under?
National security.
Falls under national security.
Yes.
Not under the Attorney General's office.
No, well, historically, that is something we had complained about, that no political office should have any law enforcement agency under its remit. That is an anachronism that dates back more than a decade, I think. So that is something that we must look at. It comes directly under the control of the Commissioner of Police, who constitutionally is responsible for all of these bodies. And it must remain so. But remaining so, there must be that continuous flow of information from the top to the bottom and from the ground to the top, so that serious decisions have to be made, when you're dealing with matters that impacts upon the national landscape.
So, Ramana, just one more question. You said yesterday you spoke with Commissioner Gibbs in confidence. Did he give you a sense, because he said that he didn't know about this raid, not so? Did he give you a sense that there seems to be some kind of disconnect between him and senior officers in terms of they going about doing certain investigations without actually consulting or speaking with the Commissioner?
I wish not to comment on that. We await the response of the Commissioner. Yes? My colleagues are also available.
Mr. Tiwari could probably give us his own perspective on the whole situation.
Well, I mean, I think, Rich, you know, and most of you all know that I've been in the media for a long time, including as a secretary of the Media Association in a previous life, so to speak. And we in the COP regard the media as the fourth estate. While it may not be written so in the Constitution, the fact that the freedom of the media is an enshrined fundamental right, and I underline fundamental, speaks to the importance which the framers of the Constitution at that time, and I dare say the society, placed in the role of the media. And for the media to perform the function of fourth estate, and that is the fourth estate as the watchdog of all the other estates of government and the general population, we have to ensure as a society that we treat with the media in a different way than we would treat with other things. And the political leaders spoke about the confidentiality of sources. I think what is of particular concern in this case is the seizure of assets of the reporter and of the media house that can reveal information that has nothing to do with this investigation, and the manner in which that is done and the potential to undermine the confidence in the relationship between media and source as a guardian of democracy is what is at stake here. And I think that when the law is applied, I'm not a lawyer, but I think that when the law is applied, it must be applied in the context of the society and with the force required to effect the law, but not undermine other laws and other principles upon which our society is founded. And I think that that is what has happened as a result of this. And to me, to raid a media house is a very grave decision. It is like launching a tactical assault on a compound in which lives may or may not be lost, because the invisible barrier that allows the media to do its work, once it is shattered, the impact on the society is tremendous. And that is why we are so concerned about this. We feel as though the issue of leaks from the Integrity Commission is of tremendous concern to the Congress of the People. We wish there to be none. We think that the officers of the Integrity Commission, both those on the commission and in the office, ought to take very seriously their responsibilities to the society. But we do not feel that the manner in which the decision was taken to raid the media house was one which took into account all of the very grave factors involved in such a raid. And that is why we're concerned.
Welcome back, viewers, to Moving Forward here on WIN TV. We just saw a clip that was taken from the COP's press conference and our media release on the police raid at the office of Newsday and at the home of reporter Mr. Andre Begu. I think that clip is self-explanatory. It shows and highlights the COP's position on the invasion of the media's privacy, should we say, or the media's right. And Mr. Tony, we just want to get your point of view on that invasion
matter, yeah.
and on the matter
Well,
generally.
let me say it is quite alarming what the police did to that media house, and they further rubbed salt in the wound by attending upon the home of the journalists to seize material there. Now, one has to be careful, and I think our political leader has made the point when one ties it in with the constitutional reform exercise, that perhaps since this is a fundamental right in our society, the right to a free press, that perhaps when it is that this right has to be breached, that there are very stringent conditions put into the laws, so that you know, there's a high bar to climb over before that right is interfered with. And I think he was hinting to that when he said that, well, you know, perhaps the material that is put before an official to obtain the warrant, that official ought not to be a justice of the peace, who really, as we probably well know, is an ordinary layman. But perhaps the material ought to be put before a lawyer, perhaps a magistrate, a senior magistrate, or a sitting judge. So that when we come to talk about constitutional reform and the freedom of the press, I'm sure that this will crop up again. But as it stands, it is not a comfortable signal for those who work in the media to see what took place at Newsday and what took place at TV6 recently, so that I'm sure that they're feeling a bit unnerved by all that has taken place. And we have to be careful, you know, that we don't upset, you know, these institutions which have played such a major part in ensuring that we are a strong and democratic and stable country over the years.
Don't you think that with this event, it has somewhat damaged our democracy to some extent?
Well, I think that certainly those in the outside world will be looking at us, you know, a bit differently, you know. You know, they will want to know, well, what's going on down there? You know, what's happening down there with your free press? You know, we have been accustomed, you know, and those of us who are in the public limelight have been accustomed to having the press do their work. You know, sometimes they are critical of us, very critical of us. Sometimes, you know, they write the stories as they see it. They give the information as they see it. But you know, I think there's a famous quote that you know. Let them do their work, you know, let them do their work, you know, and don't tamper with the right for them to do their work. You know, a free press is a bulwark of democracy, and you know, we just let the journalists do their work within the confines of the law, within the confines of the Constitution. You don't expect them to go slandering anybody or defaming anybody for no reason. But let them do their work, and you know, let the chips fall where they
How
may.
do you think the situation might be remedied? Or do you think there's a simple remedy, if any, to the situation?
Well, our political leader has made a suggestion that if it is that this right is to be tampered with, that the bar should be raised.
The threshold is made higher.
The threshold is made higher, and that you know the type of evidence, the type of information that is needed to obtain a warrant to go to the private home of a journalist and seize his computer and seize his notebook and so on, that it must be of a very, very high standard.
Because I think that infringement of going to Mr. Begu's home
Yes.
and seizing his computer, his notebook, his mobile phone,
Yes.
that borders an infringement of his right to private life.
Yes,
And
yes.
that is taking it a step further. An invasion of human rights is
Yes.
not only in our small democratic country a major issue, but worldwide.
Yes. Yes,
So I
yes.
think that is an important point for us to make mention of. It not only is a journalist and media's right being infringed, but the possibility that your right to private life is being infringed.
Yes, yes, yes.
Mr. Tony, it has been a pleasure having you on this evening's edition of Moving Forward, and I'm sure that we're going to be spending a lot more time with you, and we would love to have you on our show a lot more often.
Well-
and if you can give us your closing comments.
Well, let me say that the month of March in the COP is the Constitution Reform Month. And we urge the viewers tonight to follow the media. We will be having some advertisements shortly as to the places that we will go to have our dialogue with ordinary folks and on these 6 topics that we have chosen, 7 topics that we have chosen to start with: freedom of the press, the right to recall, the referendum, relationship between Trinidad and Tobago, proportional representation, the 2 terms, and so on.
Set dates for the
Set
election,
dates
yeah.
for the election and so on. We are starting off with 7 topics, and as I said, we launch it on the February 27th to 6 p.m. at Operations Center. And even if you don't belong to the COP, feel free.
It is a public referendum, then
It's
a
a public.
public consultation.
They call it the Grand Consensus.
The grand consensus.
Nigel, your closing comments on today's show?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Tooney for coming and chatting with us here on Moving Forward. Mr. Tooney, thank you so much again for being
Thank you.
here.
It's my pleasure.
Yes, and last week we had Ms. Ria Budu, Councillor Ria Budu, on with us, and she had mentioned to us that they were going to make some stops at some mass camps. So last week they had gone to Spice, Brian McFarlane, Legacy, Trini Revelers, Ronnie and Caro, and Tribe. So we're going to end off today's program by taking a look at some clips on what exactly went on there. Our political leader and other members were also with them, right, Kapita?
Members of our national executive
Yes.
and COP activists visited these mass camps, and in the revelry and the lead up to Carnival, the
Carnival.
festivities are there, and I know we're all having fun and enjoying ourselves. But this is just our little reminder. Please be careful, have your designated driver, have fun, but remember to be safe. So as we leave you this Sunday evening, do have a wonderful night and enjoy our little clips of the COP's visit to mass camps.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
2012 is just around the corner, and preparations are in full swing for the greatest show on earth. An important part of the preparations must be the mass camps in and around the nation's capital of Port-of-Spain. On Tuesday last, the 7th of February, the political leader of the Congress of the People, Mr. Prakash Ramada, headed a very powerful team of COP representatives who visited various mass camps in Port-of-Spain. This team included Deputy Political Leader Ana Maria Mora, Deputy Political Leader Lincoln Douglas, Chairman Joseph Tony, Mayor Ghassan Yusuf, Lisa Hensel, Lauren Pouchet, and Alison Thomas. This team visited Here are some highlights.
Welcome to Spice. This is our 4th year as a band. The presentation is entitled The New World, Past, Present and Future. So we have 3 clusters throughout the band. We try to be unique, so we try to break the band up instead of only sections, we try to break it up in clusters. So for road management it's easier as well. And this year, the New World is past, present and future. We are doing the era when Christopher Columbus discovered the New World. So we're trying to get masqueraders to place themselves in the eyes and in the shoes of Christopher Columbus as if they are now discovered one of the countries of the New World.